Tanner, welcome to what we are now calling the Dream Lounge.
Okay, thank
So
you.
Anthony's personal blog is actually called the Dream Lounge.
Okay,
It's not something he's worked on in a while, and I just had this idea it should be called the Dream Lounge. So this
absolutely.
used to be 21 Report, a bit more formal, but now it's a bit more
I like
relaxed.
the lounge
Yeah,
idea. That makes it a
yeah, and
little
we've
more
got more,
comfortable.
like totally streaming, and we can get some good, real good interaction with the audience.
Cool.
So it's going to be exciting. First of all, this is your first ever 21
It
convention.
is.
What do you think, man?
I think it's been fantastic. You guys are lucky to get to be aware of this and be a part of it. I thought the other guys who spoke yesterday were incredible. The
Mm.
talks that I've been able to hear today have been really good. And there's something about you guys. We're in a weird generation. I'm on kind of the older end of the generation, but still in the same one where it's really easy for us because the vast majority of our peers have no interest in actually improving themselves. They
Mm.
would much rather just
Yeah.
have the world say, no, you're good enough as you are, as opposed to saying, I would actually like to be better than I am and I would like to aspire to be something more.
Yeah.
The reason that's good for us is because that means that in comparison, you really don't have to exceed that much to
Yeah.
get a leg up, to
Yeah.
get ahead. And so it makes it,
Mhm.
you can be kings in a world that nobody else really has any interest in doing so because they'd rather just be told that they're good enough as they are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, can you explain a wee bit to the audience, what it is exactly that you do, first point, and then why do you do it? Why is style and fashion so important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so guys, I run a site and a YouTube channel. It's called Masculine Style. I've actually been writing for the site for about 5 years. If you go to masculine-style.com, that's the main site. And basically what I do is I take most style guys, if you spend any time in that corner of the internet, they kind of take for granted that you want to dress better. They take for granted that you know why you want to dress better, or what the actual benefits of it are. And so they focus on wear this, don't wear that, focus on these colors or avoid these patterns. And yeah, that stuff matters. But if you don't know why, if you don't know how it's actually going to benefit your life, then you're just spinning your circles, or you may actually be going way down the wrong direction when you should be heading the other way. And so what I do is I take an approach that's the philosophy of style, and I help guys figure out the why it matters that you dress better, how it's actually going to benefit your life, because style itself doesn't really do a whole lot, but it contributes to other things that are more important, and then how to leverage it to actually do that so you can improve in the other more crucial areas.
Mm. Cool. So we've got a question from Primitive OS. He's been on fire on the chat
Nice.
on YouTube. Awesome questions. Awesome guy. He says, "Hi Tanner. Um, Basics for beginners, please. Like where did you have to start?"
Yep. Biggest thing, fit is king. Pay attention to fit, because
Okay.
most guys will either err on the side of everything being way too baggy. That was a problem we saw for years and years and years. But now we're seeing guys go the other direction where stuff is way too skinny. And the biggest thing is you want to make sure that things fit right. Basically, a good kind of rule of thumb is it means I want an idea of what kind of shape you're in, but I don't want to see any of the gory details.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, it should follow your natural lines, but it shouldn't limit any of your movement. It shouldn't actually constrict your body. But I should be able to see what kind of shape you're in and what your build is like.
Mhm.
So if you focus on fit, then even if you're wearing really cheap stuff that you get from H&M or Savers, you're thrifting or anything, then it can still look significantly better than guys who drop serious amounts of money on something that fits them like garbage.
Mm. Another question we got by one of the attendees is how can how can you make dressing well more affordable?
Uh, it's one of the more common questions that I get.
Mm.
And the biggest answer is you have to figure out what the value in dressing well is. Because when you're starting to develop your style, and for those of you guys who actually saw the speech yesterday, I talked about the difference between a developing approach to style and then a deliberate one. Right now, if you're in a stage where you don't know how to dress better, take this developing approach. Be willing to experiment. And at that stage, buy cheap stuff. Go to H&M, go to Forever 21, go to Target, go to the thrift store. Don't worry about putting a lot of money into it. But then as soon as you actually have developed a sense of style and you know that it works for you and you know you're starting to leverage it for other benefits, then stop worrying about whether or not it's cheap and start focusing on whether or not there's
Mm.
value.
Yeah.
Because at that point, it's worth it to spend more money on quality pieces, because not only do they last longer, but then they also look significantly better. People who, they may not be able to quantify the difference between a quality piece and something that's garbage, but even if you can't quantify it, you can still see a difference and you can tell a difference. So start off with cheap, experiment that way, but then don't worry about cheap versus expensive, worry about value.
Mhm. So something interesting we just had a chat out in the hallway there was I was like yeah, so the way I'm dressed right now, I'm dressed mainly because I'm running about the event, doing the live stream. I'm dressed for comfort. And there's a questions that just come through from Greg. So like the reason why I'm wearing this is to be comfortable
Hmm.
because of my current situation. Usually, I honestly would want to dress better.
Hmm.
Absolutely. So it depends on what I'm doing. When I'm working, I like to be comfortable so I can focus, I guess. But the question here from Greg White says, "What should I wear when it's above 90 degrees Fahrenheit? Like, should I wear a jacket because it's hot, which relates to the comfort issue?" Um, so he says he wants to be more stylish, but it's hard in these conditions when
Yeah,
it's say
absolutely.
hot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially here because not only is it hot, but you get
Mm,
the humidity. If you think about it from an historical context, people 200 years ago were living in Florida in the middle of the heat and the humidity. They didn't have any air conditioning, and these guys were still wearing three-piece suits and
mm,
ties and everything else. And what they did is they focused on materials that breathe really well. So things like linen, cottons, tropical weight wools, and they were cut a little bit more loosely so that you could get airflow. And so, I mean, that's just one example of how you want to dress, maybe like, and that's what I'm wearing. I'm wearing something that has this jacket has a lot of texture to it. It's a really open weave, and so the air cuts through it really well, and it's not as uncomfortable as something that would be a normal suit jacket for me, and I can wear it. And I specifically brought it for that. So if you understand the value of construction practices, you understand the value of different materials and the seasons for which they're designed, then it makes it easier to dress well even in adverse weather conditions. Same thing goes with really, really cold weather.
mm,
That's why you can get guys in really thick, heavy tweeds as opposed to having to wear a parka or something that's down because
mm.
it's designed to actually work in those conditions.
Awesome. So another question we've got is actually from Ian. He's one of our volunteers at the event. He's doing a kick-ass job. And his question was, forget clothing. How important is hairstyle?
Hairstyle's huge. Yeah, that's a great question because hairstyle can either completely counter everything that your clothes are saying or it can contribute to that. Because if everything else is on point, then your hairstyle sucks. It basically says you're a guy who just kind of you just halfway everything. You don't actually commit to what you're doing. Or it says that you're not paying attention to the details. The hair can also work in really good contrast. If you think about someone who's wearing a really dialed three-piece suit, it fits him immaculately. He's got this really refined look, but then he's got really long hair, like in dreadlocks or a man bun or something to that effect. Then it's got more of a rakish look. And so the contrast between those two makes him more visually interesting. And it makes you think that he has a different story to tell, as opposed to it just being the uniform of a guy who looks like he belongs on Wall Street or the uniform of a guy who looks like he belongs on the beach. By blending those two worlds together, then it makes you more visually interesting, and people will be more inclined to not just be open to your coming up and talking to them, but even approaching you and wanting to come up and talk to you. So be just as intentional with your hair as you are with everything else, because it either works against you or it works for you.
Mm, awesome. So I've got a great question in here. He's got a great name as well on YouTube. The Big G. Um, he asks, should you wear clothes that represent your hobbies and the things you love, or just buy trending clothes like what's currently in style? So I guess the question he's specifically asking is, maybe he likes football, maybe he likes basketball. He wants to show his personality through his clothing,
Hmm.
which is a cool way to
I
think
love
about it.
that story or that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is a perfect question. And this really comes down to a lot of what I try to teach guys is so much of what you're communicating with your clothing, because as much as American culture, especially traditionally, we like to believe that we're the rugged individualists. We know, and a lot of other guys have talked about this weekend, that we are social creatures and that we're designed to exist in small groups of people or in tribes. And tribes have always, always, always used our clothing or our markings in our skin or our haircuts or anything else. We've used our physical appearance as ways to distinguish between those who are in tribe and those who are ex tribe. And so if your tribe is derived primarily by your hobbies, if your tribe is guys who are into football or into anything else that your hobby is, then you need to dress to that. And sure, you can introduce
Mm,
elements of other things that maybe you're wearing a jersey, but it fits a little bit tighter than it would have 20 years ago because things were a little bit baggier back then. You can certainly play with trends and be pay attention to what current aesthetics are and use those to your advantage. But I think you should always dress to your tribe because it signals to the guys who are part of it that you are one of them, and it signals to the guys who are not that you are not part of who they are.
I have a question too, actually.
yeah, fire away, Max.
So, like, to what degree should you pay attention to others in terms of their feedback, or listen to yourself when it comes to choosing your style? Or a better way of saying that would be like, let's say you think you look really cool
Hmm.
with a certain style, but maybe a few other people in your friend circle say, hey man, maybe you should take that hat off or whatever. But you're like, man, to me, I look really good in this. To what degree should you listen to other people when it comes to your style?
I think you're better off paying attention to the results
Okay.
because you should always be thinking about what do I want my clothing to actually do. If it's that I want it to signal to my friends that I'm part of them and I want them to like me better, which I don't think should be your primary reason. Your value should be based on other things. But let's go with that for an example. If that's your primary goal
Mhm.
and then your friends start to reject you because of what you're wearing, then it's not accomplishing the goal that it's designed to do. And
Right.
so you should try something else.
Okay.
If it's something that irrespective of how anybody else treats you, you just want to feel like $1 million in it, then it doesn't matter what anybody else says, and you should wear whatever you want.
Okay.
If it's something that you only want it to be comfortable, then it doesn't matter how it looks, and you can show up wearing a hospital gown. And so, really, what you want to do is understand what the reasons or what the goals are that you want your clothing to
Yeah.
accomplish, and then just objectively assess whether or not it's accomplishing those goals, and then evaluate from
Mhm.
there.
Well, let's just say like if you're like your goal is to just go out and pick up chicks, but also hang out with your buddies,
Hmm.
and you're wearing an article of clothing that to yourself it looks cool, but maybe one girl said, like two girls mentioned that they don't like it. Do you think you should modify it?
Nope. Especially because
Yeah.
if it draws enough attention that they're
Mm,
willing to tell you that they don't like it,
yeah.
because hatred is closer to acceptance. The opposite is indifference. What you don't want is to wear something that people are indifferent to.
Okay.
And because if you're getting negative attention, especially if your whole purpose is to try to go out and meet new people,
Hmm.
negative attention can be better than positive attention.
Okay.
And it's also a really good way to kind of jockey within position within your tribe. It's a way to kind of show your buddies that it's like, no, I'm not just one who's going to fall in line. I'm still an individual within the tribe. That you're willing to do things a little bit differently. And if they're guys who are going to resent you to the point where it starts to affect your friendships because they don't like your hat,
Yeah.
then they're not interested in your self improvement. They're just interested in the way that you validate them, and they're probably not your good buddies anyway.
Yeah.
So you would say that self acceptance of your style trumps most other people's feedback, as long as you have a good idea of what you're trying to indicate and of accepting yourself.
I would say that objective accomplishment of your goals trumps self assessment, which kind of trumps, but is on a pretty even playing field of what your audience's perception of your clothing is.
Well said. Very
Yeah.
well said.
Cool.
That's yeah, I'm just letting that resonate a bit.
That was very nicely said, man.
Do you have a personal story, Tanner? I mean, we've only got about 5 minutes, and there is one more question I want to ask. However, like, say I don't know your background, how you first got into all this.
Hmm.
We don't have the time, unfortunately, to go into depth. Maybe another time we can get you on the podcast and talk more about that. Do you have a like, based on Max's question? Did you have a point when maybe say you made the decision to start dressing better, when someone came up to you and said, "I don't like X, Y, and Z"? How how did you respond to that, and how would you recommend like someone like Max would respond to that comment?
I don't think I had somebody, I can't think of any time other
Mm,
than like my mom who
yeah.
said, like, I don't know if I like that. And your mom should always have at
Mm,
least your best interest in heart. But I know that for me, I used to wear a suit when I worked doing loans, and everybody else would just wear a shirt and a tie. And I come to find out a few years later that people resented me for that. And in my mind, I'm
wow.
thinking, that's fine. I'm not interested in being where you guys are anyway, because for you, this is the pinnacle of your career. This is the pinnacle of your self improvement. And this is just one step in the ladder for me. So if you're trying to pull me down, then I don't have to worry about you. It just made it easier for me to separate myself from those who had more of a mediocre mindset, as opposed to having to worry about whether or not they like me. It just, so what? That just makes it easier, and you don't have to worry about it because then they know.
Yeah, that's good advice. All right, guys on Periscope, if you want Tanner, we've run out of time. We've only got 2 minutes left, and I've got to ask one question. If you want your question answered, hit those hearts right here. We got to see those hearts. Otherwise, we got to go next door and we got to
We're
go and
seeing
see
hearts.
Ted.
Oh,
Right?
there
See
we go.
them? Keep
Yeah, there we
coming.
go.
Keep coming. Right? You got to keep coming. Keep coming. That's it. Yes,
We like
yes,
that.
yes, yes. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Anyway, right. So the last question I wanted to ask.
There we go. Getting away from you.
Yeah, getting
Yeah,
away
you
from us.
guys keep
Yeah,
them up. That's
keep it
awesome.
coming,
Yeah.
guys. Keep it coming. Then I'll pick a question after this one. I promise. So, in your talk at the Under 21 convention, which is where we are right now, if you guys on Periscope don't know what the Under 21 convention is, Where have you been? Go to under21convention.com. Check it out. We're having an event next October, this October 2016, the 21 convention. It's going to be our biggest event ever. It's all about men's self-improvement in terms of style, which what we're talking about now, fashion. We can't reveal this right now, but Tanner might be there. We hope he's there. So we'll see. However, let's get into the question, which is, Tanner, you just talked a lot about this thing called masculinity archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was rugged, retired, rake.
Rugged, refined, and rake.
Rugged, refined, and rake.
Mhm.
Could you just expand on that for a wee bit?
Yes. So if you have an idea of kind of generally what style you want to
Mhm.
appropriate, then it makes it significantly easier as opposed to this nebulous, I just want to dress better. We've heard a lot about fitness today, and some guys will say, well, I just want to get in better shape. Okay, does that mean you want to do powerlifting? Does that mean you want to run marathons? Like, what direction does that actually take for you? And it's the same thing with style. So I help guys figure that out. And so I teach the three primary archetypes, which are rugged, refined, and rakish, and they're based on what your relationship with the world is. So if you're a rugged guy, that means you primarily exist within a physical relationship with the world. That means that you like to work with your hands. You're probably a blue collar guy. You're someone who's a little bit more rough and tumble. Refined are guys who exist within kind of the financial or the social world. They're guys who are interested in building or maintaining civilization, and they like to work within those bounds. And then the rakes, those guys are the rebels. They're the ones who like to break the rules, and they're defined by their willingness and their desire to kind of go against the grain. They like getting extra attention for doing the wrong things. And so if you know where you fall within those, you can dress in a way that magnifies that and helps you facilitate that relationship with the world.
And you could mix certain.
Oh,
aspects, right?
absolutely. Most guys are a mix of all three, but you primarily lean towards one or the other, and then have the other two as kind of secondary and tertiary archetypes within you.
That's fascinating. Okay, time for one more question on Periscope. You've got 5 seconds to ask it. Otherwise, we're going to have to go next door and check out the other talk.
Seeing lots of hearts. Let's see a question.
Let's see a question. 5, 4, 3,
type.
2, 1. And we're going to have to go over YouTube. So Big Planning asks, what to do if you feel we're dressing well because not.
I love this question. I love this question.
So can you repeat the question?
So what do you do if you feel weird when you're dressing well? Is it just because you're not used to it, or how do you feel weird? The biggest thing that you need to distinguish between when you're starting to dress better is this actually uncomfortable, or is it just unfamiliar? Because if it's uncomfortable, especially when it comes to how it physically feels on your body, or if you're getting objectively negative reactions from people, then you need to change. But if it's just unfamiliar, if you're not used to the way that it feels on your body, or if the people you find yourself surrounded by aren't used to seeing you that way, but it actually is better, then ride through that unfamiliarity. So if it's uncomfortable, change it. If it's unfamiliar, stick with it.
Awesome. Well, Tanner,
cool.
Thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
Awesome
yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks, guys. That was a blast.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So,